to this computer. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Stacy Dimberg. Thank you for joining the OPS Advocate Lecture Series. Tonight we have Denise Ardito and Madison Bargetzi from Healing Connections Counseling Center in Ramsey, New Jersey. Our topic tonight is childhood anxiety. And I'm just going to give you some background on our guests tonight. Denise Ardito is the founder and clinical director of Healing Connections Counseling Center, LLC, in Bergen County. She is a dedicated clinical social worker and psychotherapist. Denise earned her BA in psychology from Montclair State University in 2001 and her MSW from Hunter College in 2003. Her credentials include certification as a psychoanalyst through the Institute of Psychoanalytic Studies, New Jersey Certified Social Worker status, and clinical supervision qualifications through the NASW. And she's currently expanding her expertise in internal family systems with level 1 training set for completion in June 2025. So that's happening now.
Next week is my last week.
Nice. With extensive experience working with adolescents and adults facing anxiety and depression, Denise developed her clinical strengths through a decade at Sage Day School in Rochelle Park. And she also provided individual, group, and family therapy for at-risk teens there. She further honed her skills managing an in-district therapeutic program at Wayne Public Schools before transitioning to private practice. And that change ultimately led to the launching of Healing Connections Counseling Center in November of 2019. Beyond her professional accomplishments, Denise embraces a rich personal life as a wife, mother to spirited teen son, and a dog mom to 3 playful pups. Her journey reflects a steadfast commitment to continuous learning, compassionate care, and community wellness. Welcome, Denise. And we also have Madison, who is a dedicated health professional specializing in supporting adolescents facing anxiety, anger, depression, and other mental health challenges. With a master's degree in social work from New York University and an undergrad degree in forensic psychology from John Jay College of Criminal Justice, she brings a comprehensive academic background to her practice. Madison takes a person-centered approach to counseling, focusing on the unique needs of each of her clients. She skillfully integrates techniques from cognitive behavior therapy and dialectical behavior therapy to empower her clients to build resilience and develop lifelong tools for balance and well-being. She believes that therapy isn't just about navigating through tough times, but it's creating a foundation for lasting emotional strength. I really love that last piece because I think that's so important that we teach our children to create that foundation and provide them with the tools that they need for any type of time that they may have to navigate. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and throw to you guys.
Thank you. What an introduction. Thank you, Stacy. Jen, Stacy, thank you so much for having us. I am going to hit present on Canva. I'm not the most tech savvy. And as Stacy mentioned, I've got several dogs. If they start barking in the background, my apologies. I also have a house full of teenage boys right now downstairs, so they might start barking. Okay, let's see. Tell me if you can see this in the...
We can see it. If you click present on the bottom, it should hopefully just go for it.
You guys have this?
Yeah, we got it.
All right. Okay. So I think that, let's see. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety in children. And I think it'll be helpful to Stacey and Jem when we, when you show the recording, and maybe if we could do a follow-up in the fall, is to take a look at the breakdown if people have little kids or older kids. We kind of made this just like the spectrum in general, but we could certainly specialize at some point if people are interested. Okay. All right. So Stacy, you just went over this already. This is myself and Madison, and we're at Healing Connections in Ramsey. We have 11 offices, 13 clinicians. We are in network with Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna. We try really hard to make mental health care affordable for everybody. Okay, so Maddie is going
Okay,
to take this.
so we're going to talk a little bit about how common anxiety is in children. Anxiety disorders are fairly common in children, estimating about 1 in 8. They affect about 15 to 20% of children and adolescents. Nearly 1 in 3 adolescents between ages 13 and 18 has anxiety, and it is more common in female identifying people.
Okay, so anxiety looks a little bit different in kids than it might look in adults. So we broke things down into behavioral symptoms versus some physical symptoms, just so that people can know what they're looking for. Okay, so some of the behavioral symptoms in kids would be rigidity. So these might be the kids who like need things to be a certain way, who need to like straighten things, organize. They might need like things just to be a certain way, like certain routines, and it might be difficult for them to break that. You might see some crying, reactivity, and meltdowns. So it might look like kids are acting out or being difficult. But the important thing here for kiddos is to look at the fact that kids can't really talk things out. So they're going to act things out. So one of the really important things to look at, like if you have a lot of crying, reactivity, and meltdowns, is, what could be underneath this? Um, Avoidance, so avoidance of certain situations. So it might be something that's like anxiety provoking. So there could be things going on at school that they're avoiding, even things going on at home.
Oh,
Um, I know when my son was little, he got really reactive about loud sounds. So anytime he was somewhere where there was a fire alarm, he would be looking up, looking for the fire alarms because he ended up being in front of a fire truck one day at a birthday party and the horn went off and it terrified him. So after that, he was very like reactive and if we walked into the library, he would get really nervous because he would be looking at the ceiling and looking for the fire alarms. Um, Kids might be really clingy, and this would be, like beyond your, kids like a little bit shy and then just needs a little reassurance, and then they can go off and, do their thing. This would be kids who like really are clingy, have a really hard time detaching from parents.
okay.
Uh, Irritability, panic, verbalizing worries. Hold on, I can't see the bottom. Can you guys see what that one underneath verbalizing worries is?
School avoidance.
Yeah, school avoidance.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was when I worked at Sage, I actually worked with a lot of school avoidant kids. So that's its own talk completely, actually. Some of the physical symptoms would be, difficulty falling asleep, stomach aches, headaches, and other unexplained body pains, headaches. Can I move this tool? Hold on. Can we hide the toolbar at the bottom? I don't even know. Let's see. Because I can't even see my own presentation.
Are you in presenter mode on the slideshow?
I am, should I
Uh,
not be?
no. That's usually would hide it. Yeah.
Yeah, the toolbar at the bottom. So what's underneath the stomach aches?
Shortness of breath.
Yeah, okay, shortness of breath. Headaches, nausea and or vomiting, and changes in eating and sleep. And then Maddie's going to take the next slide, and let me see if I could get this to kind of do what I need it to do so I could see this better. Let's see. Okay, go ahead, Maddie.
Okay. Okay. So some common contributing factors to anxiety. One is change in routine. So this can be anything from a small change, such as like a new activity or just or switching to like from elementary to middle school, or bigger changes such as like divorce resulting in kids having to switch households. So anything that kind of disrupts routine. Genetics, research has found that there is a genetic component to anxiety. Sensory issues, I think this is a big one. Anxiety can, or sensory issues can kind of show up as anxiety, and it's important to look at whether it's maybe actually a sensory issue where maybe they need more sensory input or less sensory input, or a different type of sensory input than they're getting. Loss of a pet or a loved one. Sure, we all know that losing a family member is horrible and hard. So for kids, a lot of the time that can show up as anxiety rather than like typical grief symptoms. So it's important to acknowledge, to look at that. Academic difficulties, again, kind of self-explanatory. Obviously, if a kid is struggling at school, it's going to create a lot of stress and anxiety. Undiagnosed mental health issues is an interesting one because a lot of other mental health issues can cause anxiety. ADHD, autism, depression can also result in some anxiety symptoms. So it's also important to look at how that could be contributing. Changes in the family. So even like positive changes such as new siblings, or even like moving if it's a positive thing. But also more challenging changes such as parental separation or divorce. These can all affect anxiety, and kind of goes back to changes in routine. The pressure to perform in academics or sports, another big one. Lack of structure is one that is very important. Children thrive in structure, and especially kids with anxiety need some type of predictability and an idea that they know how their parents are going to react to certain things and they know what they're doing next. So creating structure will help create that sense of predictability and comfort for them. Lack of coping skills, another big one. So just a lack of ways to cope with anxiety or with their emotions in general. Exposure to non-age appropriate content, both online and in person, is a big one. I'm sure everybody has struggled with that with their kids, with now the phones and the iPads and everything. So it's important to be looking out for what your kids are watching and then talking to them about things that could be upsetting to them. Mismatched parenting style. So that kind of goes back to almost lack of structure and a bunch of these other things, but kids want to see that their parents are on the same page and that they can go to one parent and they'll have the same answer as the other parent. And that sense of consistency is very important. When kids feel like their parents aren't on the same page, it can create a lot of anxiety at home. Being overscheduled is another one. I think we can all get anxious when we're overscheduled. So kids are just the same. So it's important for them to have downtime, have time to relax, do activities that they enjoy that aren't scheduled activities. Lack of awareness of feelings. So that kind of goes back to coping skills as well. So being able to identify what they're feeling, how it feels in their body, verbalizing it, just an awareness of how they are feeling is very important. So if they don't really have that, it can create a lot of anxiety. Bullying and peer issues. Obviously, bullying and peer issues can create more than anxiety. It can affect a lot of other things. So that's definitely something to look out for. And then intolerance to emotions. So not being able to tolerate being nervous or difficult feelings can create a lot of anxiety. So part of that is learning to develop some tolerance to uncomfortable emotions.
I have like so much to add to all of these things too. And Madison, you did a great job. And then I'm just like, oh, I was thinking of this and
Yeah.
this. I was thinking, I love even, Madison's language talking about like the difficult emotions, uncomfortable emotions. And I usually try to correct people when they label emotions as positive or negative, right? Because the word negative really implies that these are feelings that like you don't want to be having, or that they're wrong or bad. And I really think that even for adults, that not being able to tolerate difficult emotions really contributes so much to anxiety. And the way that I usually talk about it is that it's like these feelings are going in and in and in, and people are pushing it down and pushing it down. and they won't let themselves feel it, and there's just nowhere for it to go. So then it like kind of bubbles up and it turns into anxiety. So, and the more that we can help kids early on develop a feelings language and a tolerance of emotions, the more that will be a protective factor for things like anxiety. So, we work with the spectrum. So we work with kids all the way, from 5 years old up until, people in their 70s, 80s. And a lot of it is about teaching feelings language, tolerating emotions, being okay with being angry with people that you love. I think that's a really big one. So I wanted to add that about the emotions. Sensory issues, I think even, when my son was in grade school, his second grade teacher was the one who said to me, she's like, your son's not difficult. Your son has some sensory issues. And I was like, how did I miss that? I've been in this field for so long, but I just missed it. He was in second grade when the teacher was like, yeah, he'll put his face on the floor. He's just like seeking input. And then we were able to get some occupational therapy in there and work on, emotional regulation and just a lot of like sensory things. He had weighted blankets. He had this like big yoga ball we would like rub up and down his back. It really, really helped. The being overscheduled, I wanted to comment on too. I think we have a lot of kids that come into the practice where they're like every single day, like it's so much. And I know during COVID, when things started to fall off of people's calendars, I think people started to really realize just how overscheduled they really were. And that just creates that like, that just like increased heart rate and like I have to be here, I have to be here. And there's no time to play for these kids, and even for us as adults, there's no time for that. So I wanted to add those few things. Another thing I actually have really seen too is like the kids going from, say, I'm a baseball family, so a little league, and going from like daddy ball and playing baseball and then getting older. I've had kids come into the practice where that adjustment from, I'm just playing a game and it doesn't really count to then we need to win and, you're going to sit for this. And, not that I have a problem with people sitting if, that's like a behavior thing, but like when people are really, really hard on kids for, being really perfect with academics or sports. I had a kid that I worked with that he was just like, I really miss people being nice to me about sports. It was a big adjustment. Okay, those are some of the added thoughts I had about those things. Okay, so we wanted to distinguish between normal anxiety and worry and then things that are concerning, right? So true anxiety is a biological response to danger, right? So we don't want to get rid of true anxiety. This is like I'm on the street. I had this a few weeks ago. There was some kind of creature coming out of the woods. My dog was scared, and I'm like, oh crap, I need to get out of here, right? So like true anxiety is like I need a plan. I have to get to safety and there's something functional about that. One of the things is like humans haven't really caught up to the fact that, we're not really having to, worry about large creatures coming out of, caves and stuff. And we haven't caught up to that just yet. So normal anxiety would be something triggered by like a specific and a realistic problem, right? So I'm on a walk with my dog. There's some kind of creature coming out of the woods, his tail's under his butt, and I'm just like, oh, I got to get the heck out of here. It's kind of normal anxiety. Normal anxiety is going to subside or go away when the stressor is removed, right? Once I'm down the street, I'm closer to my house, my heart rate is returning to normal. I'm pretty okay then. Normal anxiety would occur for a short period of time, right? Like when the stimulus is there or when something's like really getting you going and you have to go fight or flight. Or freeze is a response too. So some examples would be, just like normal nervousness about a test, normal nervousness about new situations, separation anxiety. And I put to an extent in there because separation anxiety can be really normal. It's really like those kids or adults who just really can't separate at all, right? I tell people all the time, just the comment on separation anxiety in particular, is that especially like teenagers are going to separate whether you like it or not. The better we are as parents at letting our kids separate in a healthy way, they can kind of separate like this, right? If we as parents have a really hard time with the letting go, and I have a 16-year-old downstairs, I get it. It's not fun. But the more that we're able to let them go in a healthy way, the less, you know, like just like rough it's gonna go. Um, and then death anxiety, and I wanted to put this in here specifically because it's a very normal thing. First of all, we're all humans, right? So we're all gonna get certain amount of anxiety about death, right? But I had a friend like last year who texted me. She's like, I need a therapist. Like, we're really in crisis here. My kid's like really obsessed with death here. He's bringing it up. His grandfather died when he was like maybe like 4 or 5. And then her son was 9 at the time and it resurfaced, right? So I talked her through it. I said, listen, I don't know if this is like a need therapy kind of thing because the thing about death anxiety is a lot of times it happens around the age of like 9, 10, right? So kids, when they're little, are in this concrete thinking. That's what their brains can do, right? It's black and white, it's right or wrong, it's fake or real, right? And then when kids get to like around 9 or 10, they start to be able to have abstract reasoning, abstract thinking. Okay. So that makes them able to understand things on a whole different level. So that's when they start to really realize, right? Like death is real. It's a real thing, right? And then it's also happening at the same time as separating from parents and going on their own, right? So what's going on that's normal here is they're separating, and sometimes it sort of manifests in a death anxiety, right? Because the ultimate separation is death. Um, I think when it starts to prolong and it's like really, really pervasive and, you know, they're not able to sleep at night and it's going on, you know, for a while, that's when we want to take a look at if there's something concerning there, you know. And I'm thinking even just like my kid around that same age, like every so often he would just run into, you know, our room at night and be like, I'm really scared, mommy. I'm really scared of dying. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's normal. You know, just kind of like sat with him and until he could feel okay. And then he was able to go back into his bed. He just needed to regroup with us. Concerning anxiety, it does not seem to have like a specific cause or reason, right? So I explained like when my son was little and he's in front of a fire truck, there's a really loud noise, really scared the crap out of him. He's then nervous of, you know, smoke alarms for a while after. He runs a little anxious, so he's sort of probably in the middle here. But if you can't really figure out like a specific cause or reason, that's when it's probably something a little bit more concerning. Um, Not the right size reaction to the trigger. So I use this term with clients a lot, and you know, adults. I work mostly with adults now myself, but I'll usually say, like, is this the right size reaction for the situation, right? So, like me taking a walk, there's some kind of creature. I'm nervous for my safety, nervous for my dog, right? But I'm not like screaming like a banshee, you know, having a meltdown, falling on the ground. I'm just like, get me the heck out of here. I gotta make sure everybody's safe, right? But I'm also not holding on to it for days and days and days. And I'm not avoiding that street, right? Like, kind of like that was like a periodic anxiety, kind of over it, even though I'm bringing it up now. Um, and it would be anxiety that's lasting for more than 6 months, or just really pervasive. Like we're seeing these worries, this anxiety, like kind of all day, every day. Maybe when it's impeding in activities and your normal functioning, like that's when we're going to get much more concerned about anxiety. So it's important to look at what's normal and what is something that's like a little bit more concerning where we might need some intervention. Oh, Maddie, you got a lot of stuff on this.
So what can parents do to support their kids with anxiety? So keeping a routine and setting limits, kind of like I discussed before, but setting a routine, setting limits is very important. When kids feel like they don't have consistency or structure, it can start to feel a little overwhelming and exacerbate some of the anxiety symptoms. Kids want to feel like their parents have it together, and part of that is by creating structure and creating routines and setting limits. So even if they're upset that you take away their phone or something, that's actually helping them feel safe. Creating a healthy family hierarchy, kind of related. The idea that the parents are at the top and the children are below, and that doesn't mean we don't like listen to our children or anything like that, but the idea that kids know that their parents are in charge, and if something's wrong or if they feel uncomfortable or unsafe, they can turn to them because they know their parents have got it. And avoiding children falling into more like parentified roles where they're comforting their parents or taking care of younger siblings. So essentially making kids feel like kids in their families. But so learning more about yourself. So that's something I think me and Denise come across a lot is kids can trigger parents like no other because they're a
Kids
part of
will trigger
you.
parents.
Kids will, yes, I should say, not even can, will.
Yeah.
Um, and it's important to look at maybe what is being triggered for you and looking at whether that's something you need to kind of work on or learn to tolerate so that, your child is feeling like you're able to remain calm and react in a proportional way. Reducing screen time and exposure to non-age appropriate content, that one's huge. Obviously, there have been a lot of studies about the impact of social media or doom scrolling, as the kids say. So, like scrolling on the phone, all of that can just increase anxiety. And a lot of that is because they're not in the present. Their brains are elsewhere. Allowing space to calm down before entering a correction. So that could be you and your child taking some space to both regulate and calm down. Because the most important thing before correcting something or implementing some type of consequence is showing that you have this connection with your child and making your child feel cared for. And it's very important to make sure that you take that time to calm down before, or else it's going to escalate things. I think we've all had experience like that. Validating, normalizing, and tolerating feelings.
Hmm.
So validating your child's feelings would be essentially telling them that, like, if they're nervous for something, that's okay. It's okay to be nervous. It's fine. Um, their feelings are valid. And then normalizing it is essentially reducing their shame. So some kids can feel very um, embarrassed or uncomfortable with the fact that they have these big emotions, whether it's anxiety or anger or other emotions. So it's important to normalize that it's normal to have these emotions. There's nothing wrong with them. And then that leads into tolerating it. So once you normalize it, it's about then learning to tolerate discomfort or challenging emotions. Um, Providing sensory materials and time for play, huge. Kids communicate through play, especially elementary age kids, even middle school age kids do. Um, and that is a way for them to process their emotions, to communicate certain things. So giving them that time where they're able to kind of explore their own imaginations and obviously sensory materials for kids who maybe need like fidgets or other sensory type things. Um,
My little nieces like have like the big, the bin with like the rice and the beans that they could just like play and all the, sand toys in it. And it's just so soothing to just like do that. And my
mhm.
sister will do that when they're overstimulated, just like let them do that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like creating even like sensory spaces in your house or creating little
Mhm.
activities like that. The sand bins, or the rice bins are huge. And then teaching deep breathing. So there's box breathing, which is breathing in for a certain amount of seconds. I like to do 4, but I don't know if Denise has you do too.
No, same. I do 4, and I have a magnet. I wish we were in person. I would hand them out where it really is like a box. And it's so great because you could teach kids to do it, and they can also do it just like very like subtly, like under their desk or something, and just like draw it like on their leg. And it's literally like, well, go ahead, Maddie, you can talk through
That's
it.
okay.
Explain it.
No,
Okay.
yeah, like Denise said, it's basically like inhaling for 4 seconds, holding it for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4, and then inhaling again. And essentially that's the box.
Yeah, yeah. It has to
So,
be a slow box. It can't be like a, they're like this.
yes, yeah, doing it intentionally.
Yeah.
And then bubble breathing, which is more of a play therapy type thing, where essentially you're teaching kids how to blow a bubble. I don't know, should I be demonstrating,
Yeah,
Denise?
I think demonstrating. I asked Maddie if she has, I don't know.
I do.
Yeah,
I have
I'm
my
like, I
little
can't even
bubble.
see you right now.
Oh no. So I
Let
have my
me,
little bubbles.
yeah.
So for bubble breathing, you are going to, it's a way to teach younger kids probably. I use it with like 5 to like 8 or 9 years old, depending on what they're into and how they are.
I just have to say, when I first learned it, recently as a grown up, I was like, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense. So I definitely think adults could use it too.
Oh, 100%. So
Gotcha.
essentially, you're gonna demonstrate for your child, like, okay, so I put my little wand into the bubbles and I blow really fast. Like, what do you think will happen? And sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, you're gonna blow a bubble, and you demonstrate it. You're like, I want to do this without getting on my computer.
Yeah.
And and nothing happens. And then you show them if you breathe in, or if you breathe in regular and you breathe out a little slower, you'll blow bubbles. But then you can take it to the next level, which is teaching them to breathe in slowly and breathe out very slowly. Because when you do that, you get a very, I might not be able to do it, but you get a very big bubble. Wait, my
Just
bubbles
enough
are not great.
suds.
Pretend there was a big bubble. I don't know.
It
The
really, if you
actual,
really do it, you'll see the difference, and it's such a good visual of like
yeah,
this slower breathing.
yeah.
Um, I
And
have a
it,
cute example. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you going to say more about the bubble?
yeah.
I have like a client that I just loved working with, and I don't really see her anymore, but she had a little boy, and she would say to him, she's like, I have a secret. Like, you have superpowers, because he loved like superheroes. And she's like, you can pause. It's like your cape, and take deep breaths. So then whenever he was like upset, she's like, don't forget your superpowers. And it was just this like, she was teaching him how to do it, which goes into another little box in a second. But I loved it. I use that. I give it as examples to parents of, I stole that from my client.
No, that's
Denise,
great.
one of the things that we did in the schools too was asking the children what their favorite scent was. So maybe like baking bread or smelling flowers. So we would tell them to smell the flowers or smell the
Mm,
cookies and then blowing out the birthday candles. So that was some language that we used too, especially for the younger guys who we needed to teach them exactly what deep breaths meant. So I wanted to just throw that one in there too as another
yeah.
example.
I think, we did not include this on this, but Madison, I think we should also actually, when we're done with this, maybe teach the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is like a de-escalation when somebody is really having trouble like regulating and calming down. So when we're done with this, I feel like we should maybe just touch that quickly, because that's something parents can really use with their kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And um, kind of going back to what you said, Stacey, like I've noticed it is hard for kids to like learn what a deep breath is and learn what a slow breath is. So it might take them some practice, but ideally, this practice will help them be able to do this on their own. So eventually you do the bubble breathing without the bubbles. But going back to what parents can do, so the other thing they can do is having all the grown-ups in the household on the same page. Um, let me make sure. Did I just freeze?
You're frozen, but we can still hear you very clearly, unless we lost you. They have two suites in our building, and our new suite, the Wi-Fi is not as good as the OG suite. So if we lost her, I wanted to while we're waiting for her to come back on, I think some other things that I think are important. Yeah, she got kicked off. She'll come back on. Um, One of the things in the piece about learning more about ourselves as parents, I find myself in working with adults really trying to talk to them about, like, we need to make sure that we're parenting our kid and not little us. Like our stuff gets triggered, right? We all have stuff. Oh, here's Madison.
Sorry
Hi,
about
Madison. I
that.
was, I know there's anxiety there, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I got kicked off the presentation. Um,
Yeah.
I just was adding really quickly about the making sure, right, that like our stuff is not being triggered as parents, or knowing when our stuff gets triggered, right? Because I think
Yeah.
like none of us escape stuff, right? I'm just like we all got stuff, nobody gets to escape it on the planet. The more that we can, as the adults, can know our stuff, the better I think we are as parents. So what I'll say to parents is, are you parenting you or are you parenting your child, right? And we start to do that when we're working with the adults, is try to look at, what stuff might be locking us up and getting in our way. And I think there's different stages of development in parenting that like different things get under our skin in different ways. Like I actually love teenagers, right? So like I'm not necessarily very triggered by my son as a teenager, whereas like I have friends who like they really can't tolerate like the teenage angst. Like I love that stuff. Where I personally had a little bit more trouble was like when he was sort of separated when he was little, and like his first birthday that he, was like, can I go play with my friends instead? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And as he was like walking down the street, I was like, oh my God, he's leaving me, and that was really hard. Whereas like this stage, he's 16, like I'm doing better with this stage. This stage is better for me, except for the driving right now. That's, talk about anxiety. That's freaking me out. Um, all right, so Madison, go back to you, and then
Yeah.
I comment on something else after.
Okay, cool. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Happens. I was telling them the OG suite has better Wi-Fi, and you're over in the newer
Yeah,
suite.
I know it's a little iffy, but
I know, I'm sorry.
it's okay. It's not your fault. So we want our all the grown-ups involved in kids' lives. So that includes like at home, at school, to all be on the same page. And in that sense, it could be on the same page about how we're reacting to the kids' emotional responses, or even just the idea of like consistent consequences. But just having again consistency, and especially when it comes to more anxious children, making sure that like the school is aware of what's going on and knows how you guys are handling it, so that everybody can kind of work as a team. um Teaching feelings language is huge, kind of goes back to like coping skills, stuff like that. So essentially just teaching your kid what different emotions mean, how to convey their emotions, how to do it in a way that, or first how to identify their emotions, but then how to convey it in a way that other people can understand, and so that they can feel like they're expressing themselves. So teaching that feelings language is super important. I think Denise mentioned earlier, like when you don't know what you're feeling, that can create anxiety. So that's super important. Staying calm yourselves. So kind of goes back to like checking in with yourself when you're feeling triggered. But kids borrow off of the adults in their lives' regulatory system. So if you're feeling nervous and your kid looks at you and they notice you're nervous, they might become nervous. So the idea of when your child is maybe emotionally dysregulated or expressing some type of bigger emotional reaction, staying calm and trying to be that grounding sense for them. And then do not fix everything. This is something that I encounter a lot.
Yeah, this is big.
Yes, letting kids make mistakes, as long as they're not going to hurt themselves or other people, or they're not putting themselves in real danger. It's important to let your kids make mistakes and not try to fix everything. The way that they develop like their own self-regulation, resilience, and tolerance is by actually dealing with some of these emotions. So it's kind of essentially feeling your feelings and letting your kids feel their feelings. I don't know if Denise has anything she wants to add to that,
I
but
know. So I'm like, I'm just thinking even, we're raising kids in such a hard age with technology, because even just, their difficulty with waiting for everything, right? And I know, like seriously, I ordered decaf coffee pods for the office like a few hours ago and it's coming to my house. Like I think it got delivered. I got the notification. Like I don't have to wait for that. Nobody has to wait for commercials anymore, right? Where you had to like, run to the bathroom in the middle of a commercial and like run back. You can binge watch, an entire series in like a weekend. So nobody knows how to wait. And that creates so much anxiety because life is full of having to wait. Like it's full of having to like do all the things that maybe you don't necessarily want to do. And if we are constantly catering to them, they don't learn to wait and to work for things. Um, and I think it just really creates a ton of anxiety. I wanted to comment too about the idea of like making kids feel safe, right? I can't like underscore that enough. Kids need to know that they're kids in the household, that they're not in charge of their parents' emotions. Like that's too big of a job for little kids. So if we have kids that are really taking on the role of caretaker with their parents, that it creates so much anxiety because it's like having a little tiny 6-year-old with like a firefighter, uniform on, like going and fighting a fire. Like they really they're not equipped to do it. And then it's going to make them feel like they're failing. It's going to create tons of anxiety for them. Um, the feelings language thing. Oh my God, I love Inside Out. Like everybody should just watch Inside Out like over and over again. It is so, so helpful. It also speaks to Stacy before when you did the introduction, the IFS, internal family systems that I'm training in. It's about parts work, it's called. It's like we all got parts of ourselves, and that's what Inside Out is. Everybody has little parts, and like they all need to be welcome, right? We can't just banish anger because we don't like it. It's uncomfortable because like things go haywire when joy banishes anger in the movie, right? So I think that the feelings language really is a protective factor to anxiety because the more we could be in touch with like what we're feeling, the less anxiety is going to take its place. Um, and it's kind of like I was thinking before of like the idea of like, if you go to physical therapy for your back, they're not just focusing on your back. They're looking at your quads, they're looking at your abs, they're looking at all of this stuff around the issue. So when we're looking at anxiety, this is what we're looking at, all of these different factors to try to alleviate the anxiety. And sometimes it's not really anxiety that we're seeing. Everybody likes the buzzwords. So everybody wants to, kind of have this like label sometimes. And a lot of times I'm like, I don't know, a lot of this stuff is kind of typical. I want to see, oh, and then the screen time thing. I had read something a long time ago that a kid's brain experiences, like, say, violence on TV as though it's actually violence happening. There was like brain studies and they were like all the same parts of the brain were getting activated, whether it was happening live or happening just like on TV. Like they can't distinguish that. I think the same about like sexual content. Oh my God, I saw like when I guess Disney merged with like Hulu. Am I allowed to say like, name, whatever? But like, I guess there was like all this stuff that was popping up on screens and just like that stuff is so much for these like little brains. And it just like, some of this stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't learn that until I was like 20 something. I was like, oh my goodness, it's just too much. Um, why don't we go over the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 because I feel like that's like a really good practical thing that parents can um, really help with. And that it's something that you can use to like if somebody is in like a panic state, you can use this with adults too. Absolutely, you can use this with adults. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? And this is just a way that you can really help people. I'm using a cheat sheet I have it in the office, but I can never remember which is which, right? It has
Yeah.
to do with the senses. Okay. So if somebody comes into my office and they're really upset and they need to just kind of like regulate and come back down to center a little bit, we'll start to focus on 5 things that you see. So let's say, well, tell me 5 things that you see right now. And you could do that with kids too. Tell me 5 things you see right now. And then you start to see them look around and scan, right? So right there, you're starting to like break a little bit of like their focus and get them a little bit unfocused on the anxiety, right? So tell me 5 things you see. Tell me 4, and you can find this if you Google the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can find tons of, you can print it out. You can find it if you forget the order. 4 things that you can feel, right? So already they've gone through 5 things they see. Now we're on to 4 things they feel. So then they're, touching their clothes, they're touching like the couch, they're going over to like the fidgets that I have, right? So then they're labeling 4 things that they feel. tell me three things that you hear right now, right? I hear my air conditioning on. I hear a gaggle of teenagers downstairs, right? I hear, what else do I hear? Oh no, no dogs are barking right now. I don't hear a third thing right now. Two things that you can smell and one thing that you can taste. Because if you can taste five things at once when you're sitting in the office, I'm not sure what's going on. And it really just helps people, and you'll see it. You'll see like the de-escalation. So I think that's something really practical that parents can use as a tool. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next thing. Okay. So, since we are talking to parents of a school system, right? What can we ask the school to do? Okay. I think biggest thing is communicate with you as the parent. I think it's really important for you as parents. If your kid is somebody who like really, really runs anxious, I do think it would be really helpful for the teachers to know, hey, my kid really runs anxious here. Because like I said before, like what could look like behaviors in a difficult kid really could be that it's anxiety. And then it's just going to snowball because then if a teacher thinks the kid's acting out and then reprimanding and punishing, and then the kid is anxious to go to school, and then, then you're having meltdowns, it really can snowball. So I think the communication between the staff at the school and parents is really important, and letting them know that your kid can run really anxious. Understand how anxiety might show up in the classroom. Teachers could really allow access to sensory materials, fidgets, frequent breaks, chair bands. Fidget spinners were a big thing years ago. My sister was a teacher at one point, and that did not fly for her. It was too noisy. But things like putty, stress balls. I was so lucky. My son's school system has been really amazing. So he had a little, little like satchel by his desk where he had those things that he could use. He was somebody actually that did really well with gum. It really helped him because he had a lot of like sensory related things. The chair band so the little feet can kind of fidget underneath their desk. Taking frequent breaks, right? These are the kids that's like, hey, bring this note to the attendance office, like bring this note to so and so. That's helpful so that the kid could just get like a little bit of a break, right? We're talking about the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, how that could break just like that anxiety spiral. But like something like that, if a teacher can start to recognize the kids' like reactivity, maybe they could say, oh, hey, could you go and, just run this to the office? And so many teachers are so great at that. Okay, so reinforce the skills that work at home or in the therapy office. I know for us, we try to, if there's teachers that really would be willing to talk to us, we certainly will help them like learn different skills that we are doing in the office, at home, and then at school, because then we're all speaking the same language, and then it becomes familiar and normative, and that's really helpful for kids. Providing a space in the classroom, the kids are overwhelmed. I'm going to go back to my kid again. With his second grade teacher was so amazing. She created this little like cubby for like the kids who would get like really like anxious or overstimulated. And he would just like tuck in there and like read and do his work in there. And it just helped him. Again, sensory input, just like this little safe space was really like helpful for him. Be curious, right? Let's not just label it as, oh, this kid's just difficult, right? Like, let's be curious about like why. I have an adult client now who really had a hard time when she was little, and she said to me, and it's kind of like heartbreaking because she's a little over 30 now, and she said, if people had changed the language to what was happening to her versus what's wrong with her, my whole life would have been different. And it's really heartbreaking because it's somebody who really had a trauma history, and it manifested in a lot of behaviors, and they really just thought she was this problem kid, but it really was like she was not safe. So we want to be curious about what else might be going on. Schools have counseling services, right? So that's definitely something that can be provided to the kids. Finding safe staff members. I've worked with really great school personnel, guidance counselors. A lot of these anxious kids end up in the nurse's office. So if you have a frequent flyer to the nurse, or you might have a kid whose anxiety is landing in their bodies. You got to know when to ask for an INRS meeting, 504 IEP. This is something that a lot of regular ed families don't know about. I have a friend who's trying to navigate the system, and she's like, what is that? Like, they just don't know. So like there are support services in schools, there's child study teams, there's social workers, psychologists, learning consultants. Like sometimes the kids might need things like broken down, all the different modifications that you can have, accommodations that you can have in an IEP. So if the anxiety is really, really impacting learning, you might need some support on the school end. Keep an eye out for peer conflict. Being a kid is hard. Sometimes kids are kind of not nice. So sometimes anxiety is really coming from a place of not feeling safe with their peers. Or we have some social skill issues. We're post-COVID 5 years now, but those little ones that were, in kindergarten and first grade at the time who are now in middle school, we're still seeing the effects of that. I don't know if you could hear my dog is all kinds of crazy over here. And then be patient with the schools. We could also ask them to be really patient with school and task avoidance. I think a lot of times things are manifesting as anxiety or acting out when they're really like learning issues. The kids really having a hard time, or they have ADHD, and you're looking at the behaviors. Again, kids can't talk it out. So if you can't talk it out, they're going to act it out. All right, Madison.
So when should you get professional guidance? Kind of going back to what's normal anxiety, what's concerning, when symptoms last more than 6 months, when it's having an impact on family and school relationships, or I would add like school functioning, or academic performance, social functioning, all of that. Basically when it's impacting daily life, things. Loss of interest in previously enjoyed activities. So kid who is maybe now avoiding soccer when they loved soccer. That's definitely an indicator that maybe this is a little bit more than like typical anxiety. Again, impacts academics. So obviously, if you see your child's like grades declining, or again, school avoidance, those are all indicators that you could maybe use a little bit of professional guidance, interfering with daily functioning. And then when you feel helpless or very overwhelmed. So if you're feeling like you can't provide the support, or you need extra support on your end, that's definitely a good time to reach out for some guidance and some help.
Yeah, I really do say all the time, life is really hard. Don't try to do it alone, and it literally takes a village. Us as parents, and for the kiddos.
Mhm.
So this is our team, except for one new person isn't in our picture. So this is just, this is us and, what we could do. We're not the only therapists out there. There's lots of really amazing mental health professionals. We have a huge list of referrals. So like if we weren't able to help clients, we're able to kind of point them in the right direction. So some of the things that we can do as therapists over at Healing Connections. I can move this. Again, I said we're a network with Blue Cross and Aetna, so we try to really make things cost effective for mental health care. Provide support for parents. Like I really can't stress this enough. Like I really think like parenting's really hard. I tell people all the time, like you can think you have your stuff together, have a kid. And then you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that stuff was there. So provide support for the parents. We really ask for parent involvement anytime we're working with kids. So we do periodic age appropriate visits with the parents. So if we have like a 5-year-old through like maybe like 9 or 10, we're meeting with the parents a lot more. Teenagers, like because it's age appropriate, we might start to lessen the involvement with parents. But we definitely try to collaborate with parents and kids. We teach the parents and kids how to regulate emotions. Again, this is going back to that, like just the emotional awareness and language is super helpful. Help parents learn what's normal versus what's concerning. So we made a really short list for you on the other slide. But this is, really a good opportunity. Like I said, when my friend reached out to me, she's like, oh my God, my kid has to go to therapy. And I was like, hold on a second. Like, listen, I think therapy is super valuable. I think healthier people go to therapy. I think everybody should be in therapy. And I think people go to therapy because of the people in their lives that don't go to therapy. So I'm a big supporter of therapy. But sometimes things are just typical and maybe we don't necessarily need a mental health professional involved. Again, going back to recognizing if our own stuff is getting triggered, we can help teach coping skills to parents and to the kids. Teaching parents and kids how to tolerate emotions, right? I feel like we're trying to stress that a lot too. Difficult emotions are still acceptable. Anger, I remember when my kid was little, he's like, sometimes I feel like I don't love you. And I was like, I know, like that's normal. Sometimes you're not going to feel like you love me. Like that's okay. Like I still love you. It's okay to be mad at me. And listen, I'm not calm all the time. Sometimes I'm like, oh, sometimes I need to step away too. Um, we also can provide referrals for other services, right? So we have a huge list of referrals for occupational therapy, speech therapy, prescribers, support groups, neurologists, we have a whole list of the dietitians. We try to really look at the whole person when we're working with people here. And walk alongside you in the journey. Life's a journey. Um, it's got its ups and downs, and I definitely think again, I wouldn't try to walk it alone. That can be isolating and really hard. And then we have a thing for questions, but so I don't know if Jen or Stacy have any questions that they want to ask. Where's my list? Where's my people here? Oh, wait, I can't hear you, Stacy. Hold on.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, great. I think that this is a great introduction to anxiety in children. I think that we really touched upon some amazing things that can start the conversation for the future. I do think that our children in the day and age that we're in now have a lot more anxiety or difficulty with coping with anxiety because of all the things that they have experienced in their life that maybe we didn't. I know that I hear my mother or my father saying to me every now and then, what are they worried about? They're kids, they have nothing to worry about. You didn't worry about those things when you were a kid, or maybe even thinking that as a parent, you didn't experience those things. But life is so different now. Like you said, with the technology, unfortunately with, gun situations in the schools, with the competition of being the best at everything. There's so much pressure on the children nowadays that wasn't necessarily always there. So I think it's important for us as parents to understand that and to hopefully be able to give our children the tools again that they need to deal with these stressors. I think that we can definitely get into more of these helpful tips in the future. So if this is something that interests you, please definitely feel free to reach out to Generai, and we can have Denise and Madison, come back and give some more, targeted type of support to our parents. I know that, anxiety manifests differently in everybody, and that, we all are going to experience anxiety at some point or another. But it definitely takes a whole family approach. I think that's super important to note again. I know one of the things that I always do is, as a parent, is I'm very hard on myself, and coming from education and a behavioral background, I sometimes, get upset with myself and say to myself, like, how did I let this happen? Or how did I not respond to my child the exact way I felt was appropriate? But I usually take that time as a learning opportunity for both me and my child. So that time I lost it when, I had just slaved over cooking dinner, and, they didn't come to the dinner table after 16 times of me asking. And then when they got to the dinner table, they said, ew, I hate this. And I just said, you know what, don't eat. And I, lost it. I realized that that was the perfect opportunity to tell my children how I was feeling, and that it was something that was going on not only with with them, but with me as well, and explaining to them what I was feeling, how I was feeling, and maybe how I didn't cope with it the right way. But that's okay because there are times that we don't cope with things the best. The most important thing is moving forward and trying to cope with those things in the future in the best way that we know how. And normalizing that, right? Normalizing that we're not always going to respond perfectly.
For sure.
And
That's
that
why I was like, listen, I've lost my cool. And I think what was beautiful about, your interaction with your child, Stacey, is I think that so infrequently kids don't have the experience of like the teacher or the parent sometimes saying, "Hey, I was wrong. Like I'm really sorry about that. Like that, I really shouldn't have done that." And what you're doing is, first of all, you're really validating their experience, but you're modeling how to own it, right? Like we all got our stuff. We all overreact sometimes. And like how beautiful that is to like give that corrective experience to your child, like that, right? Because then you're also helping teach them how to have healthy relationships in their life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Modeling, I think, is definitely very important in multiple ways. So, thanks, ladies, so much for
Thank
joining us
you.
tonight. I think that this is such an important topic because, like you said, it does affect so many different parts of a child's life, especially in school and academics. And the more we know, the better we come at advocating for our children and making things easier for them. So thank you. I appreciate it greatly, ladies.
Thank you for inviting us. If you have any, if anybody wants to ask specific questions or have something else maybe in the fall for different age groups or, let us know. We love talking about this stuff. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks so much,
Thank you.
ladies.
Good night.
Bye bye.
Bye.